Hey there, I'm Sarah Hodges, and this is Executives Uncut, the podcast where we provide solutions for the corporate cycle of hell. Now, today we are talking about intuitive competition, and I'm here with David Grasso, my good friend and the executive director of Bold TV. Hey, David, thank you for joining us.
Wait, I'm an executive now? No one told me that. I guess
You
it says it
are?
in my title, so I guess
It
that would be
does.
the big clue, right?
Yes, and I think we met before you were an executive. Should we tell them how we met or how we got to know each other?
Yeah, so you ended up marrying one of my friends from Harvard. You got to throw that H
Harvard.
bomb in, right? And
Mhm.
but we met on a very scenic day in the New York Harbor on a yacht with a very motley crew of folks, but I believe we had a great connection.
We had a great connection. We chatted. I was pregnant, so I was the only one not drinking. By the end of the night, I think I was the only one who was coherent, but it was pretty wild. And I remember the yacht just kept going around Manhattan Island and around and around, and it was really fun. And then like the fifth time, I was like, okay.
I mean, we did get some good Statue of Liberty selfies, and you
We
have some
did.
some some pretty pregnancy pictures, and like we made it off the boat to live to tell of these tales, didn't we?
We did. What a great story though. But I want you to tell our audience more about Bold TV because I think Bold TV is just an amazing initiative. Can you tell us more about it?
Yeah, so if you haven't noticed, the media landscape has become corporatized, right? But not just corporatized, it's controlled by a handful of behemoths. There's a lot of memes circulating online about how media should used to be very decentralized. And these days it's basically five or six brands. And hats off to these people. We have no problem with them. In fact, we consume their media. But what we're trying to do is bring that decentralization back to media. We're trying to make media more representative of the general populace instead of being liberal or conservative or New York centric. We're trying to democratize access to media and really spotlight everyday Americans. We really have a focus on entrepreneurship, people who are solving problems and empowering themselves. We do some political content, but we try to be a little lighter on that because we feel like there are a lot of options in that area. So what we're trying to
Oh,
do is really make media accessible to everybody and not really have, you know, the problem with big media is that it's so divided, it's so polarizing, and there's so much punditry that we're just trying to get back to the roots of what media used to be. I mean, as recent as what, Sarah, 10 years ago?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like you're just trying to make media more authentic, really.
Make media great again, I guess.
Make
I
media
don't
great.
no, but the problem is media is too great, it's too big, it's
Mm,
too static, and it's not really changing with the times, and we really want to get to a younger audience. I'm here on the island of Nantucket, a place where a lot of executives go, and I'm here with a friend who's another executive, and I was telling her, like, young people don't even remember legacy media. Because remember, people like us, right? Like we watch CNN and now we consume CNN digital, right? My friend is
mhm.
like, what do they watch? HuffPost? And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, that's part of it, but they're too young for HuffPost too. So media has
Yeah.
just become this like decentralized blob. And where Gen Z and where your daughter is going to consume media, Sarah, is going to be a very bizarre landscape. And we're trying to competitively effectively compete in a landscape that is changing every day and primarily lives on social media and in apps on television. And,
Mhm.
we're a video centric brand, but we're going into articles and trying to leverage some technology. And I don't say this too out loud, but we're looking at trying to do automatic articles. So
Oh,
to
that's really cool.
competitively compete with the big guys. So we're developing that technology right now, and I hope to be back in 6 months to tell you more about that. So,
That'd be awesome. We will have you back on because I definitely want to hear more about that. But I'm wondering, with the landscape of media changing so rapidly, what is your ultimate vision for Bold TV, or can you even have one? Because you can't. The future is so unpredictable.
so Bold TV to me is a demonstration project. In my ideal world, in about a year or two, I would hand off Bold TV to someone else and move on to other projects that are similar. nonprofit media or a hybrid of for-profit and nonprofit, and just demonstrating that people who are not traditionally from media can compete in the digital media space, and that we can actually move the needle through a very decentralized grassroots strategy. That would be my ideal vision. I think that's why we have the support of many foundations, because I don't sell Bold TV as the solution to the problem. It's the demonstration product that, hey, we can compete in media. We shouldn't just cede this territory to, these two extremes that are driving our national dialogue right now. We need to produce moderate content that celebrates capitalism, that celebrates the American way of life without all the political labels. And we need to put it where young people live, which is on digital media, which is in OTT, which is over the top, Netflix, Hulu, services like that. And it is changing so fast, Sarah, it's hard to keep up with it. One of our biggest problems is social media. And that's everyone's biggest problem. If you're in corporate, they change their rules like I change my socks. And it takes a lot of my time to make sure that we're keeping up with the format that they're desiring at the time. But yes, the answer to your question is Bold TV is just my demonstration project. I see myself as a change maker in media, and I have other projects in the works, including, I'm working with a boomer centric brand loosely. I'm looking at disrupting media, and that starts with Bold TV.
That's so awesome. And it requires you obviously to connect with your audience in a very different way, not just in the way, in terms of social media and which platforms you're using and abiding by the rules, but in how you deliver the content and the messages and the way that you approach conversations with the people you're interviewing. So, what do you do deliberately to intuitively approach media and competition differently than other companies?
Okay, so number one, we don't try to push one narrative. We believe no matter what our donors are demanding, that it's important to present both sides, because young people grew up in an age of punditry, and they know if they're hearing something that's clearly biased, that it lacks credibility. So one of the ironies of the modern era is that young people are calling out the mainstream media on their BS. So whether you're liberal or conservative, we feel like you have a seat at the table. Many couples are liberal and conservative, so why can't we present both angles on our channel? I tend to lean a little bit more to the right. I'm married to someone who leans more to the left, and we don't fight at home. So why are we fighting on TV? So what we try to do is we try to present these issues in a way that makes sense to people. I feel like the problem is, and I think you'd agree with me here, Sarah, is that you turn on TV and after 10 minutes of screaming, you don't even know what you watched. So, and it's
I just don't turn on the TV.
Exactly. You just seem agitated and whatnot. And additionally, life is not all about watching pundits yell at each other. We are a full service media brand, and we do a lot of fun stuff too. We recently interviewed, an actress from The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. We interview entrepreneurs who, they talk about how they're being stifled by regulations and government, and part of it's political, but ultimately they're solving problems, they're empowering themselves, they're getting a handle on their economic future. And really, that's fun and not, screaming at each other. So that is our secret sauce. It's just back to the, hey, we don't want our brains filled with negativity. Yeah, we have some political products, but get this, they last 6 to 8 minutes. That's all you get.
Nice.
You can't
talk about it all day long.
Who can watch these shows? I just want to know. I emerge from them angry, and I don't even know why I'm angry. So, and I would say I lean more to the right, but I'm moderate, so I'm willing to watch any of them. So why do we produce content like that? That's just sowing more division and creating more problems. We're small potatoes right now, but I have a vision for a more moderate brand, and I feel like there's a space in that. The data aligns with what I'm trying to do, that there's a major market gap in centrist media. And, that's how they all used to be. So I don't see why we couldn't get back there.
I love it that you really found this edge by doing the opposite of what the big guys are doing, and in going more centrist, going more moderate in the conversations that you're having. So I'm wondering, looking at this from a completely different perspective, What advice would you give to other companies unrelated to media, right, that also have a lot of competition?
I would really, really, really rely on your staff because one of the things about being an executive is that you lose touch with mainstream culture and reality. And you have to understand the higher up you are, the more you inhabit bubbles. Like right now, I'm sitting in Nantucket. Like, this is not mainstream America. My cousins in the Midwest don't know what this is, right? Like, and Sarah's my friend. Sarah is another very atypical person. She may live in Michigan, but like we're
That lives
not
in
our we're not our consumer. We are not
Yeah.
representative. And yeah, I'm gay, I'm Hispanic, I'm diverse, I'm married to a Mexican guy, but like we're still like he went to an Ivy League school. Like we are not our consumer demographic. So I think it's important to realize that you are out of touch and that you do not understand like the normal man's plight. And what I do, and this is part of my vision to move half of my back office to normal America. I'm working on that. Is that we have to be careful that we're not living in this bi-coastal BS. Like, well,
Mhm.
because like what do? We go to Miami, we go to LA, and we live in New York, and we go to Nantucket occasionally. That is not America. That is us. And I think you have to realize that that is not your demographic. That is there. By the way, that demographic is totally saturated. The Atlantic, the Washington Post, the New York Times, etc. And a
Oh,
lot of
good
the high
point.
end stuff is saturated. The growth areas are the Sun Belt, where everyone's heading. Let me tell you something. Half of the plates here in Nantucket are in Florida plates. The whole
Wow.
demography is shifting to Florida and Texas and these low tax states. And that's where regular people, rich people, middle class people are going. And that's really the future of our country.
Yeah.
Places we go to, normal people don't go to. So I think just to sum this up, you are not normal. If you have executive in your title, you have nothing in common with people who are not executive. And I think it's important for you to realize that. And the higher up you go, the more out of touch you are with mainstream culture.
I love it. So in other words, talk to your staff because you said rely on your staff to get a reality check. Like, what is TikTok?
I do that every day. I didn't know what TikTok was. And they were like, oh my God, it's amazing. One day I wake up and I see my husband watching these videos and I'm like, what is that? And I remember when that happened with Twitter 10 years ago. I guess I'm getting old. I'm like, what am I looking at? And that's one of
How
the
many
things.
characters?
Yeah, well, they keep on changing that rule. Remember, they change their rules like I change my socks. And they'll put a warning label on you if they're not happy with you. I think it's really important for you to lean on your staff. I run a Gen Z and millennial brand, and I'm barely a millennial now. And even though I am a millennial, like I'm an unusual millennial. So it's really important to keep in touch with your roots, and you can always use your staff as a proxy, right? That's why you should always hire a diverse staff. And I'm not just talking about gender and race, I'm talking about income, geography, political opinion, religious persuasions, because let me tell you, I lean on all my staff. Like, I have as a proxy, I have a Southern evangelical, and I have, an urban girl from Harlem, and I have a, more from Sarah's region, the tall white guy from the Rust Belt, and I really lean on them because I don't have a lot of the answers to a lot of these predicaments, especially when you're dealing with content that can quickly turn into a hot potato. But let me
Yeah.
remind everyone traffics in content now. Everyone has a blog. Everyone is expected to have political opinions and policies and say certain things and virtue signal at other points. And by the way, when that happens, I ask my staff, what am I supposed to do? Because I'm unfamiliar with this. I can talk
Mhm.
to, my business manager all day about our P&L, but I don't know whether we should be tweeting Black Lives Matter. Can you tell me more about what I should be doing? Because I am woefully unfamiliar. In my day, Mr. Clean didn't have a political opinion. Evidently, he does now. So you need to educate me as to what I should be doing, how should I be responding, and ultimately to do the right thing, right? Because that's what we're interested
Mhm.
in doing.
I love that. So you're basically getting ideas and advice from your staff to intuitively connect with your audience. So, in terms of executives appearing on camera, how important do you think it is for executive leaders and leaders in general to, appear on camera? And what advice would you give them besides talk to your staff first to figure out what's important?
Okay, especially if you're outside of what I call the bi-coastal bubble, right? If you're in a place
Mhm.
like Grand Rapids, Michigan, Detroit, Orlando, Florida, all these places, media is something that's very important. And remember, all issues are local, and something that is really unused by executives is just being a reliable source for your local television and channel and newspapers. And by the way, make it easy for them. When you pitch them a story, fine. They always need two interviews. You are one of the interviews, and then your friend down the street is the other. I was a
Good point.
television reporter in West Texas for 2 years and for some time in Spanish language in Florida. And if you make it easy for me, I'm going to make it easy for you. And let me tell you, media is authority, it's credibility, and everyone leaves it on the table. They think, oh, they're going to twist what I'm saying. Okay, one of the weird things that has happened in media is that budgets are cut and we're a little, short on resources. It doesn't have to, you don't have to weigh in on, the dog catcher. You can just, let's say you're a cybersecurity firm, right? You can get on camera and talk about best practices of how do you keep your, cyber footprint clean, right? And if you do well, that channel will come back to you umpteen times. And then you can embed that video in your newsletter. And then you can use that to pitch national outlets as a cybersecurity thought leader. So always remember, start local, think global, and use local media. They are there to help you, to cover you, especially if you own a company in a place that doesn't have a lot of, good interviews, especially small markets.
Mhm.
Use it, do it. And by the way, as a former television reporter, I will tell you, I will go back to you again and again and again, and you will get better and better and better. And it's only so much time before you're on Fox Business doing the same thing.
That's awesome. Really awesome advice. And it really it's similar advice to the advice that I got recently from someone in local media. She was like, make it ridiculously easy for them and they will put you on TV. So just a second what you just said. But so speaking of which, what was your personal favorite guest on Bold, or I guess in West Texas, and why?
I think my favorite guest was his name is David. He's like me. His name is David Light, actually, really easy to remember. He is this guy with an inspiring story. He went to Yale, just like your husband. So, we all traffic in Ivy League relationships. But I met him and I was like, listen, that was a great interview, but I want to know the real story. And he said, I run a pharmaceutical lab. He runs a lab called Valisure. Basically, it's to ensure the pharmaceutical quality of generics. If you didn't know, generics have serious quality issues, right? And he came to me and he's like, you have no idea what a big problem this is. And before long, it won't be long until a medication that we take en masse is proven to be very dangerous. And this is the man who discovered that Zantac gives you cancer. So, and you heard about that. Yes, that was him. That was his lab. And this was something, Sarah, that people would give their babies. You understand Zantac, the reason why they put it in their lab is because his business partner had been given a prescription for his baby. And he was like, maybe I should test this before I put this in my kid's body. And, basically they discovered that and I don't understand the mechanisms of it. I'm not a scientist, you know,
Mhm.
basically it turns into carcinogenic nonsense the second you ingest it. And this is a drug that's been around since the 70s. So to me, that just proved, yeah, the interview was good, but I have so many people in my network like that who are actively trying to solve these problems. Like that's a big deal. I took Zantac like candy when I was a kid. So can you imagine that this is rolling around and how many people have died because of the incompetence of our generic pharmaceuticals industry? And he's just
Oh.
out there calling them out on this. He recently testified in front of the Senate, and it just proves to me that regular people every day who want to solve problems, specifically entrepreneurs, are inspiring and changing our lives.
That is so awesome. And using media, it sounds like, as an outlet to get that message across.
Well, he has a great PR person, and she was always pounding the pavement. Her name is Alexandra. And Alexandra was always one of these people who was like, you need to appear in this and you need to appear in this. And then guess what? When they discovered Zantac caused cancer, guess what? Everyone came a calling, and they were ready for that, right? They sat down with the Wall Street Journal, and they sat down with the Washington Post and CBS News, and really, once you interface with media, you're ready for that flood, which, by the way, in today's world, the flood can come at any time, and it's how you manage it. So, because remember, the Twitterati can catch you, and then boof, you're trending. So I think that's a great example of, this was a guy with a dream, with a problem to solve. It happened. He told me it would happen. It happened. He told me on the show it would happen. He's like, it's only so long before we discover that all of this is just a dumpster fire, and that, your heart meds that you're taking every day to keep grandma alive, right? Yeah, the quality of those is hit or miss, right? But it turned out to be Zantac. So
that's crazy. Oh my gosh.
crazy. Real life, right?
Real
Media
life.
is real life. Yeah.
That's how you're connecting intuitively with your audience, is bringing that real life to them and knowing what it is that they connect with and what they want to hear. So
But
you
think about
have,
it
oh, go ahead.
intuitively, Sarah, right? Intuitively, right? The business partner wanted to protect his baby. That's how we have to think about business, right? We have to think about our own families and our own quality of life. We don't want to take pharmaceuticals that are unsafe. We don't want to consume media that makes us mad. We don't want to do things that angers our consumer base. So that's exactly what intuition is all about.
That's amazing. So you have 3 incredible tips that you set aside for us today. Do you want to share them with the audience?
Yeah, sure. I wrote them down here. So number 1 is leverage media, right? Never leave it on the table. I always, as a reporter, was baffled by the people who didn't leverage media. Let's say you had 2 district attorneys. I was at a news station in West Texas that was between 2 counties, right? So we had the tale of one district attorney and the tale of the other district attorney. Guess which one lasted a lot longer than the other? Take a wild guess. The guy who was always like, yeah, I'll talk to you, no problem. Come to my house. His wife was so annoyed with us because they'd be like eating dinner and I'm sitting there interviewing him. Media is legitimacy, it's credibility, and you build your way up the value chain. And remember, in a digital world, your consumer base, even if it's just internal to show your employees, they want to hear from you. As an executive, you have to demonstrate leadership, and a lot of leadership is demonstrating your own value and your own vision, and communicating that on camera is an essential part of the game in today's world.
Love it.
Okay. Second, diversity. Yeah, we all hear that. Like, we do diversity pretty well, right? At this point, it's probably considered a faux pas, right? To just have one demographic for your whole staff, right? We don't really do inclusion well, right? That's something more we're working on, right? Like, how do we make everyone, regardless of their background, be included, right? And are we including people to the detriment of other people? So we have to be careful with that. But remember, diversity is a proxy for your consumer base. In a country that's rapidly changing demographically, not just racially, but age-wise and geographically, now everyone and their grandmother's moving to the Sun Belt, you might want to consider, right, leaning on your diverse staff to make decisions. And by the way, it's the best way to prevent a PR disaster. We've seen again and again, especially in Western Europe, where they're not as diverse as we are, right, where they make these decisions and you think, who approved this? Like, I'm thinking of the Olay lady who was, dark skinned and washed herself and became white. And it's like, on what planet was this appropriate, right? But, the same thing goes for everyone. You have to lean on your diverse staff. And I'm not just talking about the checkbox. That's great that you got a Black or Hispanic employee. No. I'm talking about diversity in every way: religion, politics, geography, income, education wise. Like, hire a dropout, folks. That's a big percentage of our population. They need representation too, and they're going to buy your products. And tip number 3 is really connected to this: is recognize you're out of touch. We're all out of touch. We start inhabiting these worlds that are rarefied air. And it's like, a lot of us didn't grow up that way. I grew up as a middle-class kid in Miami, but that's definitely not my reality now. I'm sitting here in the mist in Nantucket. That's nothing I imagined when I was a kid. And, it's a problem business wise if you let it get to your head. And we see that again and again. And recognize that you're out of touch. Also remember that this is actually my phone that you're looking at, right? Everyone has a camera. Govern yourself accordingly. Do not go and curse out the hostess at the restaurant because you will get caught on camera. You will trend on Twitter and you will get removed. So remember, we're all being watched. Be a human and recognize, hey, I'm out of touch. Maybe I'm a little demanding. Maybe I'm a little eccentric. Maybe I only go to the Harvard Club in Nantucket and Miami Beach. So I need to think about my cousins in St. Louis, Missouri, who have 4 children and go to church every Sunday. And really, that's more the norm than what I am. So always remember, you're not normal. That's the reason for your success and could be the reason for your failure if you're not careful.
That's so true. And I think that when people start to realize that, when executives start to realize that, that's often when they find a coach. They're like, I need someone who will tell me the truth. And I'm like, I'll call you out on your shit any day of the week. That's the favorite part of my job.
Isn't it fun? It's so fun to look at someone objectively as a coach and say, hey, you do this well, but you got some serious blind spots.
I'm a little gentler than that, but that's essentially what happens. But yeah, I think that, for our coaching challenge this week, what you said earlier is my favorite thing that I would like everyone to really focus on this week, which is evaluate where in work and life you may be out of touch with mainstream culture specifically, and start a dialogue with your staff intentionally about a popular topic you're not familiar with, TikTok, whatever it may be. And more importantly, something you mentioned earlier is prioritize keeping up with it, because the landscape changes so fast that these conversations need to happen regularly. David, thank you so much for these amazing tips. Where can our viewers find out more about you and about Bold TV?
So you can visit our website. We just recently rechristened it. It's beautiful. It's boldtv.org. It's gorgeous. It's scalable. It's everything. I could do a whole episode about how to build the right website because let me tell you, it took a lot of work. So please see the fruits of my labor and my lovely staff's labor. It's boldtv.org. We are also socially native. We're on every social channel, including TikTok. We're struggling, but we're getting there. At Bold TV, BOLD TV. I'm a very active LinkedIn user. I was telling her I had 13,000 connections. I'm an insane LinkedIn user, so feel free to connect with me. Tell them you saw me on Sarah's lovely podcast, and I will make sure that we can work together. And also for the executives out there, if you are media friendly, I highly encourage you to be in touch with me and come on the show.
Awesome. Oh, David, it was such a pleasure to have you today and to hear such interesting perspectives, right? I love how you say a lot of things that not a lot of people will say. And I think that gives the executives listening some really great insights. And I can hear the seagulls in the back right now. Like, hello, it's so relaxing.
You can also hear the private jet traffic going over me because the Nantucket's airport's right there. And it's just like, Friday, you can tell executives don't have a lot of time, right? They flew in on Friday and they're flying out today. And they're just like, they're on a schedule. But yeah, so greetings from the mist. There's deer, there's birds, there's rabbits, and it's great to have some relaxation and get out of the city. So
awesome. Well, thanks again. And thanks to everyone else for tuning in to this episode of Executives Uncut. And if you enjoyed this content, make sure to subscribe and share with someone else in your network who could benefit from this talk. You can visit hodgescoaching.com and click on podcast for new episodes, or you can follow us at hodgescoaching.com on pretty much every social media, although we are not on TikTok and we are not on Twitter. But you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts.
That might be a good idea to stay off of Twitter.
I decided we would leave that one behind. But so, anyway, thank you so much. I'm Sarah Hodges, and I will see you next week.